Hello and welcome everybody. I've got what is going to be an absolutely fantastic one for you guys right now. I watched the first handful of minutes of this game. I forget exactly how far. It wasn't much. It was sub 10, but this game was already turning out to be a fairly wild, interesting one. So I decided to stop right there because I wasn't recording at the time. You know, get this game held out so that I could then turn around and cast it for you, because I am looking forward to what actually happens throughout it. So despite me moving around, let me go back to blue real quick and actually introduce these people. Here in blue, we've got Kiluminati playing on Loki. So he will have the faster build times, the ability to spawn myth units with damage from his own units, primarily hair seers, and all of the excellent spying ability, which we did hear go off just a bit ago. Let's see if we can't find exactly where it is. Yeah, there we go. Right on the Pharaoh too. So that's a spy that's going to last really all game. Also gives some very good indication of where exactly people are going to go. Because if he decides to go, say, early second TC, we're going to, of course, see that. If he decides to start speeding up, you know, the temple, he'll see exactly when that happens. People just tend to throw Pharaoh on exactly what they're really trying to focus on in the game. So you will be able to see that well, unless Gabu, which I'll introduce in just a second, decides to keep the Pharaoh just on the monument here and perhaps use a priest, which he can do because he is playing Ra. So Ra gets that ability to also empower buildings with his priests and has the big focus on the Migdal stronghold units and eco to a certain extent, but not really. I mean, he gets the rain power, which can be helpful in boosting your own farms later on in the game, but isn't going to be a real important one. I mean, Alfheim doesn't have the most hunt ever, but what hunt is here tends to be pretty safe because you can just do some fantastic walls all over the map. Alfheim really lends itself to just securing yourself and turtling in. Really allows you to grab extra TCs and makes things like relics super obvious for, say, newer players who maybe aren't keeping an eye out. This big setup here can really give things away, especially if they aren't looking at the mini-map for the icon, which does seem to be common enough. Although that's not going to be a real issue here. Both these players are much higher up on the ladder than that being an issue. Oh man, off the top of my head, I can't really remember. Somewhere around the 1400s ELO, I think. I may be totally off there, but that's what I want to say that they're roughly at. So we will get a more defensive temple here out of Kiluminati. Something you don't necessarily often see with Lokis. A lot of Lokis are going quite aggressive, but we are seeing some interesting walling already, with this being grabbed a very good defensive wall because it just blocks off that whole access from this side. Could be harder for him to get his left side actually worked out, but then we see these like really aggressive semi-defensive wall placements out here. Now, of course, despite the priest going over, Gabu won't see these because they haven't actually been built at all. They've just been placed. The foundations have just been placed. But if he gets this here, he could end up having this very safe extra all the way to this third TC. And I thought we were actually going to start seeing this build. Oh, Gabu will be able to tell that the wall is at least going down from this one, which has been started. Nice little house wall. Won't do too much because the priest will be able to just go around it. Walls out there won't be able to stop it. Okay, he is trying to get ahead very quick. And of course, nice. Look at that. Super nice walls. Not only will Gabu be able to get some really good favor off of this, but oh, shifting sands has to get used. That's super good for him. That's a heavy waste of shifting sands and goes all the way up to 50 favor for the second use. Honestly, I don't even think it's worth it. I probably would have just deleted the priest, so that the Norse player couldn't get any extra favor off of it and just accepted that loss. I don't know if that early shifting sands is actually worth it for just a single priest. And we are already seeing Shadoof and Plow, so we are going to see a farm Ra, a very defensive Ra, which is going to in some ways make these walls kind of useless for Kiluminati, because this Raw's probably not going to be pushing in anytime soon. Of course, he doesn't know that. We are getting some extra priests out, so he may be predicting an attack, which would not be surprising. After that sort of aggression that just occurred, I would also be expecting an attack. And what a interesting labor just sitting out there. I guess he must have clicked it out there when trying to deal with the priest at some point accidentally. I'm seeing this blue. Okay, we just got an ox cart gathering some hunts. They're over here, and this is one of those things where it's like, even if you wanted to, you could hunt all the way out here when you've got these walls here, which some players will actually focus on earlier. And here we go, there's the rest of the walls. Kiluminati is just choosing to wall up his whole area of the map, which is a very interesting choice because he knows that he has the control here. So I mean, I guess he doesn't actually see this, because moving even the walls up to like right here would be much better, or choosing to try to grab all the way up to this TC and get 4 fully grabbed early on might be even better. But I mean, he could choose to go all the way up here if he wanted to. Gabu is not going to actually do anything about it. Dang, that is a lot of farms. He is getting ready to push out a ton of units if he's building that many farms. Still floating a large number of resources. I wonder if now that these are down, if we're going to see him push up towards the 3rd age. I wouldn't be surprised if we also see rain here soon. I'm surprised we actually haven't seen rain already. I guess it's just because he doesn't actually have enough laborers to work all of his plots yet. There's a couple that are still being left out. There we go. But here's another thing. I mean, with the Pharaoh here, Kiluminati will, if we switch to it, be able to see this no problem. So he knows, again, that Gabu is being super, super defensive, because there's no way he's going to have a big army and have been able to get all of these farms set up. A little bit of a house, probably just because the Berserker is already over here. No other real reason to throw it down. But I wonder if we're going to see the 3rd settlement as well here soon. I mean, he of course took the 2 back here already, but I would almost... He almost needs to decide if he wants to just start going into military and try to do something, or start going for the 3rd TC. Because he knows this Ra is now going to start moving up to the 3rd age, and there he is. He's going up with Sekhmet. So then he's going to have the Migdal down, and then he's going to start outputting some heavy Migdal units. So Kiluminati needs to actually be preparing for what that offensive is going to look like. How is he actually going to defend against that? Gonna throw out a house here to try to see when that starts happening. And we do see a ton of upgrades now coming out for Gabu. He is in a great spot economically, even though the graphs up here show him as a bit behind. It's mostly on expenditures. Now, of course, the big production advantage of laborers, well, gatherers and dwarves, is of course going to still be like very impactful, but it isn't, things don't look nearly as bad as they actually are for these two teams. They're actually pretty evenly matched, which again is actually kind of bad, because these being evenly matched right now really just means that ultimately Kiluminati is actually kind of behind, because we're going to see this Pharaoh come out and he's going to undoubtedly boost up I'm going to boost up the barracks. I was assuming he was going to go straight to boosting up a Migdal out here. I guess he doesn't have quite enough. It's... Is it 550 gold for Migdal, or is that for TCs? I think that's actually TC cost. I'm forgetting what Migdal cost is off the top of my head. But good choice moving up to stone walls, although he really needs like something out here to start stopping this, because the Scarab's going to chew through it, being completely unwatched out here. A single Hairseer, I mean, that'll be able to take out either one of them. I don't think it'll be able to take out both if they turn on it. Especially with this Pharaoh out here who could jump in if he wanted and help out. Currently boosting the mining camp. And it is smart of Gabu to start going straight into these Scarabs, because he knows that these walls are here, so he can guess that there's walls everywhere else, which there are a ton of them. So interesting to see a Loki playing so defensively against a Ra. You're almost like playing into the Ra's win condition by choosing to work like this. Hair Sears will be able to do some work here, but he does need to produce a couple more. First gate is going to be lost. Second gate's going to go down pretty quickly behind it. Kiluminati is still not really focusing on unit production at all, or even like military buildings at all. Armory just now is going up, so he's still going to be a ways from third age. I wonder what Gabu decides to do here, because I mean he could start producing army and decide to go on the offensive. I'd be in a weird spot here, because I'd be assuming that Kiluminati had a bunch of units built up and was planning to do something with them, so I'd be a bit worried about moving out of my base. I'd probably start just looking at trying to get up to tier 4 and rush ahead that way. Get enough of a military, which he has enough already, that he could survive a couple pushes. And we do have Forsetti, no, Braggy, sorry. Braggy coming out for Kiluminati. He's gonna need to add something else here. He needs to have some units moving up, because these are about to start pouring into his back line, and a couple more walls is not going to do nearly enough. You can see how fast these double walls are falling. I wouldn't be surprised if we soon get this extra TC out of Gabu. He could also, of course, take his other ones. And the units were clearly just a tack move. They are getting a bit distracted here with completely wiping out these walls instead of just moving straight in. Kiluminati does get up to the third age, so he does have flaming weapons available now, which of course will always help. He can now also make his hill forts, which I wouldn't be surprised if he just throws down here soon. Way back here, that's not what I was expecting. Okay, he does cancel that. I would have assumed it was somewhere like in this spot, or he took out the house and put it here. No, he is going to keep it way back here. So he's going to use it to protect primarily just the TC. It's not even going to actually protect gold at all where it is. Not that a single hill fort could actually really protect against this many units, not unless you had a lot of army yourself, which he still doesn't have, which really means making this hill fort kind of worthless. It'd be better to use those resources to actually just put into more military. Dwarves moving out, undoubtedly, just to that gold pile. Kiluminati is going to have to keep playing it safe. He does not have the units he needs to truly fight this off, and there's plenty of priests here to help deal with the mythics. Gabu is kind of getting free range, and unfortunately for Kiluminati, I mean, he's built enough great halls back here now. Interesting, he is going for just great halls. I mean, so he can see what's available. He knows that there's spearmen on Gabu's side. So he knows his cavalry are going to get chewed up if he tries to throw them in. And despite having gone for so many slinger techs, Kiluminati is not like really using them at all. He isn't really pumping out slingers. Still just going for spearmen. So right now, Kiluminati doesn't have any real good targets. He has his hair seers, which can move forward, but are of course not super cost effective in this situation, especially since the scarabs are just going to get pulled back if a battle starts. And it looks like Kiluminati is just going to decide to base trade, I have to assume is what's going on here. He's just going to leave Gabu to do whatever he wants, and Kiluminati is just going to push forward into his base. Okay, he's going to go more direct. I thought he was going to take this super roundabout route, which would not have helped him at all, but he is going to go straight through. He does have a much more sizable army, at least. Goatees are going to come back to try to do a little defense, which they can at least distract to make sure nothing happens. Unfortunately, Gabu is focused a lot on the non-essential buildings, and so he's not doing a terribly large amount of damage since he didn't go to eco. Unlike Kiluminati, who immediately is deep in Gabu's eco, and is able to start doing quite a bit of damage. Gabu will decide to turn around and bring his units in, which will possibly allow, it looks like the Goatee are going to get caught up in these units. They got moved back here and are getting distracted on the way. Sizable hordes, though, back here. Unfortunately for Gabu, he left his back a little too open, didn't build any walls of his own. did clean up the goatees with these spearmen since there were as many of them as there were, but he's gonna have to start producing more. Now, I guess the difference here is Kiluminati didn't wait to take out any barracks, so Gabu does have plenty of production that he can keep up with. So he did manage to hurt Gabu even further, and the flaming weapons are going to help him heavily in this fight. Might not win with all these spearmen around. Looks like he definitely won't, especially since he's just flooding in with a lot of goatee and cavalry. Jarls specifically. And they are, I mean, I guess they are good against human soldiers, but we got good against human soldiers versus good against cavalry. So things are going to kind of even out. Interesting. He did, Kiluminati did choose to use Undermine here, which not super effective, but I guess he doesn't like really have any other targets. And there is age 4. Surprisingly, Kiluminati is the first one to age 4, which allows him to bring in the Nidhogg, and that's going to do a ton of damage. That is bad for Gabu, having all of those that damaged. More get hurt as they have to run back through the fire. Nidhogg there is going to completely change things, as you would expect for a mythic age power. Kiluminati is going to be able to take this. Really, I'd like to see the Nidhogg. I guess it got forced out because there's just so much range here, especially for priests. And that way, Egyptians are kind of rough for the Nidhogg. He does try to get a little bit more eco, which is very smart. If the Nidhogg's going to die, at least get him going out over there. Flames will keep them off for just a little bit longer. But that distraction of pulling these units back actually did help Kiluminati. With how quickly that Nidhogg started to go down, this fight actually probably, I was probably wrong, it could have still gone in Gabu's favor, and actually still might. Gabu is doing a lot here. Still has not, surprisingly enough, still has not pulled out a Migdal at all. So he's not really utilizing that bonus of Roz. Doesn't need to, because he is still winning. Manages to save his TC, which is, I guess, surprising, but he only had the one rock giant. Kiluminati finally putting down some longhouses, so he will have some counter against these barracks units. He can start building just a bunch of throwing axemen if he wants. He has plenty of wood and gold to do exactly that, and that's what we see, a bunch of throwing axemen come out. Unfortunately, they're coming out right in front of Gabu's army. So for the most part, they're probably going to die as soon as they come out. I didn't realize somehow Kiluminati got stuck here on the actual wall. So he wasn't able to push in. Does have some units back here dealing with the dwarves. Should get some more. But now that there's some extra frost giants, the exact opposite. In fact, fire giants coming forward. And the ballista coming in. Unfortunately, still just look at how quick they get chunked down. Fire giants are really scary units. They do a lot of damage, but Egyptian priests are just so good at dealing with myth. And you can produce them so easily. It makes it really, really hard to go any sort of real myth unit into Egypt. Not unless you're able to just like get cavalry or something back there super quickly to be able to chew them apart. And unfortunately, slingers are so focused on the giants, the priests are just start dying. We may be seeing... Migdal is out. I was wondering if we were going to start seeing a unit switch at all, but it doesn't look like we are. Let's just take a look around at what's happening. So there is nothing surprising. Kiluminati's making good use of all the space he's bought, and this fighting being trapped kind of over here to really do whatever he wants and spread out. Gabu hasn't really done so, but I guess he doesn't need to. His food is all taken care of by these giant farms. He's got plenty of wood still around, and that gold mine will have to get moved fairly soon here. But there's plenty of options still very safe back in his base. I think Gabu is reaching the point that he's going to have to start doing this switch. Camel Riders would be able to get back on these Ballista really quickly if they don't get distracted. Unfortunately, if they sit in front like that, they're just going to get chewed apart. This mini Ballista do a ton of damage. Unfortunately, still Camel Riders get sort of stuck on the wrong units. We can see how fast they fall apart. If you can get some hack damage back on them. Ballistas are still ultimately siege units, so they... Although yeah, I mean, they are still siege units, so for some reason in my head I just swapped armor types. Hack damage does pull them apart very quickly. It's interesting that both sides are concentrating so much right here. Nobody is really deciding to raid at all. Now, for Gabu, he might, you know, think, okay, if there's all these walls here, there's undoubtedly going to be a ton of walls here, which he'd be very right on. But why has Kiluminati not chosen to go to the side? The one time he did do a raid here, it was very effective and allowed him to gain a lot of space back. He could go back to just playing very defensively here and trying to push in. That siege goes forward on its own, it's going to fall pretty quickly. Yeah, look at that. Oh, just got absolutely chewed apart. In part because of these giants and the ballista. There's a lot of crush damage coming in. And although... Well, I guess actually the bigger issue is trying to run siege into throwing axemen into the Norse is very rough, since they do hack. They kind of just tear a siege engine apart. And there we go. Gabu decides to call it. Honestly, I think very early, as things were still kind of stuck here. Sure, Gabu kept losing units, but that's because he kept trying to push directly into this little choke that Kiluminati was just defending. He could have easily started building up his forces and played defensive. He wasn't even at the 4th age yet, so he had those options available to him. Yeah, that's interesting. I'm not quite sure. I guess he may have started having these or seen these raids start coming in and decided that that was just going to be it. He just had no real way to fight against that. Maybe he decided he couldn't move units over quick enough, because he could have temporarily garrisoned and moved these around while people came in to defend. I think he still could have defended both sides just fine. And he has enough resources around, he could have thrown a Migdal over here to help on this side. But for whatever reason, Gabu decides to call it. Kiluminati won with his very defensive yet aggressive strategy on Loki, deciding not to make units until like very, very late. But that worked out. Even with, he even somehow got to the Mythic Age first, which is very surprising to me. I'm incredibly surprised that Gabu didn't throw down that Migdal earlier and just get up to the 4th Age earlier. But that'll be it. I'd love to know what you guys think of this sort of just oddball strategy and how you guys might defend it. Let me know down in the comments. Other than that, I hope you all have a great day.